Hello there, everybody, and welcome back to the GSL-English Podcast, a podcast designed to immerse you in the English language in a relaxed and natural way. My name is, of course, Gideon, and I hope you are doing well. I hope you have had a lovely week, whatever you have been doing, wherever you are in the world. And if your week hasn't been that good, if your week didn't live up to your expectations, then I hope this weekend you've just had some time to unwind and relax a little bit. You deserve it. You deserve a bit of a break. Life is hectic sometimes, isn't it? So we all need a bit of a breather, so to speak. And perhaps this podcast will help you do just that. But of course, the primary focus of this podcast is just to surround you within the English language in as a natural way as is possible. So if you are a returning viewer or listener on Spotify, then thank you so much for joining me. You know the drill. You know how this podcast works. You know that it's time to just sit back, relax, grab a cup of tea, a coffee, and enjoy a little chat with me. But if you are new here, then please don't forget to subscribe for more incredible podcasts every week. Some say this is the best podcast on YouTube. And by some, I mean myself, my wife, and my mother. The three of us, we feel that this podcast is incredible. So yeah, you need to subscribe. And when I said there, some say, does that remind you of any particular British TV show? I don't know whether it's just me, but I got Top Gear vibes. I don't know if any of you watched Top Gear. The older one with the original three. Jeremy, James and Richard. None of the new stuff. Just ignore that. It's a load of rubbish. But the original Top Gear, when they used to introduce the Stig, Jeremy Clarkson would come out and say, some say he blah, blah, blah. And then he would say, all we know is he's called the Stig. And that just reminded me of that when I said that. So yeah, have you got any Top Gear fans watching or listening? Please let me know, because I would say Top Gear is my favourite show of all time. Absolutely love it. On Sundays, my family and I would always watch Top Gear together after dinner. And then after Top Gear, it was time for bed. But yeah, Top Gear was that time together as a family. And I think it was so successful because, okay, the primary focus was on cars, but it was entertaining for the whole family. Loved it. Absolutely loved Top Gear. So if we've got any Top Gear fans watching, please do let me know. But I wanted to start this week's episode with a massive thank you. And that is, thank you for all of your comments. I know that sounds a little bit strange, and I promise you I'm not just saying this to win you over. You know, I genuinely mean it, because I do see all of the comments, and the comments have started to pick up a little bit now on these podcasts, particularly on YouTube. The views have started to pick up as well, just ever so slightly. But I just want you to know that I do see all of the comments, and hopefully I get to reply to all of them. I'm sorry if I do miss them, but your words of encouragement mean so much to me, and they really help me to keep going. So please don't underestimate that. You know, the power of just, you know, a little thank you or just some nice words. It really does mean so much. But I don't mean just for me. I mean for any creator, you know, or anyone that's doing something that you like, appreciate or enjoy. Nice words. They don't cost us anything, but they mean so much, don't they? So your comments have inspired me to do that more on YouTube, because I'll be honest, I'm not a big commenter. I have YouTube channels that I love to follow. I watch every video they release, but I'm not a big commenter at all. But seeing how much your comments mean to me and they encourage me, you've all inspired me to comment more on YouTube. So thank you for that. But also thank you just for your kind words. I love this podcast so much, and I love the little community of English lovers, learners of English, whatever it is that we are creating. So yeah, keep it up. Well done. I do know I am in dire need of a haircut, by the way. I just caught myself. I have my notes here and I can see myself here, which I kind of hate on my other screen. But I do know I'm in dire need of a haircut. That will be coming this evening. My wife actually still cuts my hair. Yeah, it started in COVID. You know, I was a victim of COVID haircuts. I shouldn't really say a victim, should I? I wasn't forced to do it. And my wife did it from her own good nature and goodwill. She volunteered to do it. And it's quite a daunting task, isn't it, cutting someone's hair? So victim was completely the wrong word to use there. I was a candidate, shall we say, of COVID haircuts. You know, all the hairdressers were shut. The barbers were shut. So my wife said, yeah, do you know what? I'll give it a go. And after half a YouTube video, we gave the first haircut a try and she did quite well. And she did so well, in fact, that has just continued over. So 4 years later, down the line, my wife still cuts my hair. Much, I think, to her dismay. I did try going to a barber's in between, but it just wasn't the same. So yeah, my wife is my hairdresser now, and she shall be cutting my hair this afternoon. I don't know why I'm talking to you about my haircut, but I just caught myself in the camera, got a little bit hanging over the ear there, and it's getting a little bit wild. So I shall be getting my hair cut by my lovely wife this evening. Are you still a home hair cutter, or do you get your hair cut at home since COVID? It's funny how many things just changed and stayed that way since COVID, isn't it? Particularly for me, it was getting my hair cut. But there you go. So yeah, thank you for joining me again. If you are new here, you'll realise that I do ramble on. I do get distracted by different things. And when I first started the podcast, I used to fight that. I used to fight the inner monologue that was happening whilst I was talking to you. And it didn't work. And I've realised that I just need to go with it. Okay, so you will notice I do get distracted from time to time, but just roll with it with me. You know, I want to present the English language in a real, honest, authentic and natural way. So I share all of my thoughts with you. But what are we going to talk about today, you're asking? You think, Gideon, that's enough rambling. That's enough nattering. Just get on with it. I'm dying to know. We're going to talk about idioms today. I think it's been a long time since we actually spoke about specifically something connected with the English language. We often read articles, we have a chit chat about different topics, which I love. But I thought today, let's talk about something actually directly involved with the English language, related to the English language. And one of my favourite things in the English language is idioms, or are idioms. I love them. I love how weird they can be sometimes. I love that sometimes they just make absolutely no sense. But they are really important. Idioms are essential for the English language. I view idioms like the flavouring on food. For example, let's imagine that I invited you round for dinner. I said, come to my house. I'm going to cook you a meal. And I said to you, is chicken and rice all right? You said, yeah, that's fine. I love chicken and rice. So I cooked you chicken and rice. But I boiled you a piece of chicken. And I just gave you some plain rice. Okay, it's food. It's sustenance. There's no denying that. But we don't often do that, do we? We don't just eat as plain a food as possible. We might add some seasoning, some salt and pepper, some sauces maybe, just to really bring some flavour, bring some life to that meal. That's kind of the way that I view idioms. We have vocabulary, which is fine, which is great to use. But idioms spice it up a little bit. They add a bit of flavour. They make the use of our English more dynamic. And that's why I love them. Because sometimes they express things in a way that simple use of vocabulary just couldn't. So that's what we're going to look at today. We're going to look at some points from Britannica.com. As always, you will see the link below in the description, if I remember to do it, that is. So if I don't remember to put that link in, I'm sure you'll let me know in the comments. But we're going to read an article, from Britannica. If I can just get it set up on my phone. There we go. On my computer, not my phone. Okay. Just going to click record there. Anyway. So it's an article from Britannica. 7 everyday English idioms and where they came from. That's the interesting part that we're really going to focus on, is where these idioms came from. So there may well be some idioms here that that you are familiar with. But isn't it quite interesting to know where they actually came from? So let's just break down this article, as always. We'll just have a nice relaxed chat about it. But firstly, the article identifies, what is an idiom? When we say that word idiom, what are we talking about? So let's all get on the same page as to what we are referring to when we talk about idioms. So of course, if you're watching on YouTube, please feel free to read along with the text that is on the screen. Or if you're listening on Spotify, just listen carefully, enjoy, and maybe you can go back and watch on YouTube another time. Fantastic. All right, let's get into it and see what an idiom actually is. An idiom is a phrase that is common to a certain population. It is typically figurative and usually is not understandable based solely on the words within the phrase. A prior understanding of its usage is usually necessary. Idioms are crucial to the progression of language. They function in a manner that, in many cases, literal meanings cannot. We use them every day, sometimes without even realizing that what we are saying is nonsensical without the implied and widely accepted meaning behind it. Many linguists have dedicated themselves to finding the origins of these idioms, 7 of which are featured on this list. So there you go. So basically, an idiom or phrase is very cultural. It's very geographic. And depending where we are from, we use different idioms. For example, not all different idioms, but we use certain idioms more often. For example, my wife is from Manchester. She sometimes uses different idioms to perhaps I would more naturally. But the thing with idioms is you can't often get a meaning based on the exact wording. You've got to kind of have a prior understanding of its usage to know what it's talking about. It's very rare that with an idiom you can get the understanding simply from the words alone. And that's what makes them quite confusing. But it's also a point that makes them so awesome, so great. And a lot of people, we use idioms. We know the meaning, but have absolutely no idea why it means what it means. For example, if we take one random idiom, to bite the bullet, okay? So we're not going to look at that idiom in this article, but if I said to you, you've just got to bite the bullet. Well, that idiom means to go through or do something or bear something that you don't really want to. Perhaps it's a difficult situation, but you've got to do it. You've got to go through with it. For example, I hate the dentist. I absolutely hate going to the dentist, but I have to bite the bullet and just go. Now, if you are familiar with that idiom, you know it means we just got to suck it up, get through that difficult time and go to the dentist. Bite the bullet. Why on earth does that have that meaning? Well, the origin comes from wartime, where if a soldier was injured on the battlefield and they needed some kind of surgery or medical attention, the nurse would come over, and often to alleviate the pain, to bear a difficult situation, they would give the soldier a bullet shell or a bullet to bite on as hard as they can. So they bite as the procedure's happening, and it helps them just to alleviate the pain a little bit. They are going through that difficult situation. So we bite the bullet when we have to bear or get through a situation that is difficult or we don't like. But I guarantee you, many users of that idiom will not know its origin. But we just use them because we're brought up with the meaning. We're brought up with the definition. It's probably the same in your language, that many of the idioms, we don't know where they come from. We just use them. And that's what makes them really interesting. For example, it says here in the second paragraph, we use them every day. Sometimes without even realise that what we're saying is nonsensical. Oh, you just got to bite the bullet and go. Bite the bullet and go. That's nonsensical. Words alone, that makes no sense. But we know the implied and the widely accepted meaning. And that's just why I love them. They're so strange, they're so odd, and we just adopt them into language. So we're going to zoom in to some of those idioms today. And let's just get straight into it, okay? The first idiom we're going to look at is to turn a blind eye. Okay? To turn a blind eye. To turn a blind eye to something. Now, if we turn a blind eye to something, it means that we refuse to acknowledge a known truth, or refuse to take action on something that we should, that needs action taken on it. For example, I'll turn a blind eye, but next time you'll be in trouble. Okay, so maybe a child at school has done something naughty. They've done something that they shouldn't have done. Or the teacher says, look, this time I'll turn a blind eye. I refuse to acknowledge what you have done, the truth. But next time, I won't. You'll be in trouble. But okay, we take those 4 words, turn a blind eye. Makes no sense if you don't know the meaning. But if we understand the origin, it kind of clears it up a little bit. Now, one thing I just need to put out there as a disclaimer, many origins of idioms are speculation. And you'll notice that a lot of these, it will say that many people, or the majority of people, believe that, blah, blah, blah. So actually, the origin of many idioms is still in dispute. So we're just going to go through some of the most popular origins that have been adopted for certain idioms, but you do need to take them with a pinch of salt. There are perhaps different theories as to where these idioms came from, but we're going to look at the most popularly adopted, popularly held origins of these idioms. Okay, so let's look at the origin of this one, to turn a blind eye. While many proposed origins of this phrase are disputed, it is commonly accepted that turning a blind eye comes from a comment made by British Admiral Horatio Nelson. In 1801, he led the attack alongside Admiral Sir Hyde Parker in the Battle of Copenhagen. Nelson was blind in one eye. Parker communicated to Nelson at one point, via flags, that he needed to retreat and disengage. Nelson, however, was convinced that he could prevail if they pushed onward. Nelson then, holding the telescope to his blind eye, pretended not to see the signal, making a sly comment to a fellow officer about reserving the right to use his blind eye every now and again. So this is quite interesting. So you've got this Admiral Horatio Nelson, who led the attack in the Battle of Copenhagen alongside Sir Hyde Parker. Now, Nelson was blind in one eye, meaning that he could not see throughout one eye. So this Parker communicated to Nelson and basically said, look, you've got to retreat. You've got to disengage. You've got to come away from battle. But Nelson didn't want that. He was convinced, that I can win this. If we keep pushing forward, I've got this. I don't need to listen to you. So rather than looking through his good eye at the flags and the signal to retreat, what he did was he held it up to his blind eye, basically refusing to acknowledge what Sir Hyde Parker was saying. So basically, he was saying, look, I put the telescope up to my eye, but it's my blind eye. So I'm refusing to kind of acknowledge what is actually the truth. what is actually happening. He's turning a blind eye to the situation. Isn't that interesting? So the most important thing is to know the meaning, which is to refuse to acknowledge a known truth. But this origin just gives you more of an understanding as to why we use that idiom. Great one to use. So the next one is a more commonly used idiom. Now, you most probably have used this idiom. Have you ever said, I'm feeling under the weather? Or have you heard somebody say, I'm feeling under the weather? Well, what does that mean? Well, of course, if we feel under the weather, we're feeling ill, sick, not ourselves. As an example, my son was sick yesterday, and now I'm feeling a bit under the weather. So in this example, the son was sick yesterday, but today, maybe a parent is now feeling under the weather. They're also feeling sick. Idiom that we use all the time. Oh, are they okay? No, they're feeling a little bit under the weather. Are you all right today? No, I feel a little bit under the weather. We use it all the time. But how on earth do those 4 words again mean that? Feeling under the weather. If we take that literally, what on earth? Why on earth does it mean that? Well, let's have a look at the origin. This idiom is believed to be nautical in nature, so at sea, to do with boats. When a sailor was feeling ill, he would go beneath the bow, which is the front part of the boat. This would hopefully protect him from adverse conditions, as he was literally under the bad weather that could further sicken him. Therefore, a sailor who was sick could be described as being under the weather. There you go. So going back to nautical terms, when a sailor was not feeling well at sea, he was feeling ill, he'd go to the front of the boat, the bow, underneath, and this would protect him from adverse or bad weather conditions. And in this state, he was literally under the bad weather that could further sicken him. So, if a sailor who was sick, he would be described as under the weather, meaning that he is quite literally under the weather. So we have adopted that now to say that we are feeling sick. Really interesting, isn't it? If we keep going on, to beat around the bush. Have you heard that idiom before? To beat around the bush is something I hate. I think we all do it from time to time, particularly when we've got something that we don't want to say. You know, we've got perhaps some difficult news that we have to present to a friend, or perhaps at work, you know. Got to say something you know is not going to go down too well. So you beat around the bush. And that means to circle the point, to avoid the point that we have to make. As an example sentence, stop beating around the bush and tell me what really happened. You know, I remember this at school. I wasn't very good at doing my homework at school. You know, I would always forget. And my teacher would go, Gideon, where's your homework? And I'll go, oh, miss, the funny thing is, look, I was walking to school last week and then I saw a tree and there was a squirrel in the tree and the squirrel ran off, and then I picked up a blade of grass and then I saw a giraffe. And you know, you'd come up with this whole story and the teacher would go, Gideon, stop beating around the bush. Tell me what really happened. If this is the point that we have to make, when we beat around the bush, we go around and around that point. We want to avoid saying it as much as possible. But where on earth, again, does that come from? Well, this common phrase is thought to have originated in response to game hunting in Britain. While hunting birds, participants would beat bushes in order to draw out the birds. Therefore, they were beating around the bush before getting to the main point of the hunt, actually capturing the birds. So, whilst hunting birds, what they would do is they would walk around beating the bushes, or perhaps shaking them or knocking them, and then they would draw out all of the birds. And then that would happen before the main point, the main reason that they were actually there, which was to hunt. So they were circling or perhaps going around before the main activity of actually hunting this game or these birds. So they were beating around the bush, going around and around and around, drawing the birds out. So we sometimes do that, don't we? If we have a point that we have to make, well, before actually making that point, we like to go around and around and around it. Often, I don't know about you, but in the hope that the person will get the main point to avoid us saying it. Another daily idiom that, if we take the words literally, make no sense. But if we know the meaning, if somebody says, "Oh, please don't beat around the bush," we know exactly what they mean. But the origin makes it clear. I hope you find this as interesting as I do. I love it. This is why I love the English language. Okay, another one. A very famous idiom that I'm sure you will be familiar with. And that is to spill the beans. Spill the beans. Any guesses as to what that means? Well, to be honest, if you watch it on YouTube, you'll see it on the screen now. But for those avid Spotify listeners, have a little guess what that means. Well, if we spill the beans, it means to leak a secret, to say something or to tell someone something that we should not have done so. And the example sentence here is, "Stop being so coy. Just spill the beans." Or, just spill the beans and tell me, basically. Tell me what's going on. Now, I didn't actually know the origin of this idiom that I use all the time. Come on, spill the beans. Spill the goss. Spill the details. Tell me everything. What's going on? But I didn't know the origin of this. And it's actually very interesting. And the origin will also make that picture you can see there make a lot more sense. So this one's a bit tricky, as there is no clear-cut answer. So there's no obvious, clear answer. The consensus is, however, that this is most likely derived from an ancient Greek voting process, which involved beans. People would vote by placing one of two coloured beans in a vase, which typically People would vote by placing one of two coloured beans in a vase, white typically meaning yes, and black or brown meaning no. This meant that should someone spill the beans, the secret results of the election would be revealed before intended. Hence, spilling the beans is related to revealing secret information. How interesting is that? So basically, the common idea is that this idiom came from a Greek voting process, where people would vote at an election or perhaps for a choice by either for yes or no. And they would do this by a certain colour bean. So one colour meaning yes, one colour meaning no. But if someone was to knock that vase over, then the results would be evident before they were intended to be revealed. So you would see how many of one colour and how many of another, so that you know whether it would either be going for yes or for no. So the beans have been spilled. Information has been revealed before it should have been. It was secret. So hence, when we spill the beans, we are revealing information that was either meant to be kept secret or was not intended to be revealed just yet. I remember I did this as a kid. My mother, at the time, my mother had organised like a little trip for her and my father to go to Paris. And it was a big thing at that time for us as a family. My brother and I, we were going to go stay with my grandparents. And we kept this secret for like months and months and months. And then I remember a week before we went, we was all out for dinner. And I stupidly turned to my dad and said, "Hey, Dad, you looking forward to going to Paris?" Oh, you should. My mum could have killed me. The look on her face, I will never forget. I'd spilled the beans on a massive family secret. I wanted the world to swallow me up. And of course, his reaction is, "Well, I'm not going to Paris, son." But the beans were spilled. He knew something was up. It's an awful feeling when you do it. Often it's unintentional. we're all good secret keepers. If a friend tells us a secret, we're good people. We don't go sharing it with others, but sometimes it just accidentally slips out, doesn't it? You don't want it to, but it does. You spilled the beans. There you go. Okay. The next one, the proof is in the pudding. This one is a bit of a confusing one, and there's many different kind of ideas. So we're just going to kind of keep it simple and run along with one idea. Depending on who you ask, you will actually find an array of definitions for this odd idiom. Here are some of the most commonly used definitions. Okay, number one. This is the first definition. There is evidence to back up a previously made claim. Specifically, that's a difficult word to say, specifically evidence intrinsic to the object in question. For example, of course this project will be successful. The proof is in the pudding. So there's evidence to back up a claim you have made. That's the first definition. Second definition. The process of achieving something isn't important as long as the end product is good. For example, I may have had to walk 1,000 miles to find this treasure, but the proof is in the pudding. So the end product is the most important thing. Or the third definition. The success of something can only be measured by putting it to its intended use. So the success of something can only be measured by putting it to its intended use. For example, you'll have to try it out before you buy it, since the proof is in the pudding. Which definition do we go with? Well, let's have a look at the origin to answer that. The reason for the plethora or multitude of definitions is most likely the Americanization of the old British idiom, which reads, "The proof of the pudding is in the eating." Whereas the British version makes at least some sense. The shortened American version is nonsensical, meaning it doesn't make sense. This led to the varied use of the idiom in a multitude of situations with varying understandings of the definition. The British version, however, is closest in definition to the third listed above. So that means, going to the definition, the success of something can only be measured by putting it to its intended use. And that's because the word proof was synonymous to test in the 16th century, which is when this idiom is thought to have surfaced. Pudding was also far different from today. It was most likely a minced meat dish. Therefore, the true test of the success of a pudding dish is in how it tastes, not any ornamentation or appearance. More generally, the success of something can be measured only by putting it to its intended purpose. It is unknown where the more American definitions come from, though they are used very commonly. So the idea of this origin is that, the true test of success of a pudding dish is all in how it tastes, not on how it looks. The proof is in the pudding. But there's so many definitions there. So kind of got the origin, but I would love to know which one you think fits the best out of all of those definitions. So the proof is in the pudding. There is evidence to back up a previously made claim. That's the one I tend to go with. Second, the process of achieving something isn't important as long as the end product is good. Yeah, we use that as well. So, and of course the third one, which we've already looked at. Interesting though, isn't it? And I guess it kind of highlights that some idioms can be used with varying definitions. Okay. The final one we're going to look at is I've got it in the bag, or it's in the bag. If we say that something is in the bag, or I've got it in the bag, it means secured success. We have no doubt that we are going to succeed at something when we use this idiom. For example, I'm not even worried about the interview. I've got it in the bag. So maybe we've got a job interview coming up. We're not worried about it. I've got it in the bag. In my mind, I've already got the job. Success is secured. There's no other option but success. And often we just say, it's in the bag. Got it in the bag, mate. Don't need to worry about it. Complete success. I've already got the job. But where does this idiom come from? Well, although there are other recorded uses, the version of this idiom that has become so widely accepted came about thanks to the old New York Giants, now San Francisco Giants, baseball team. It began as a superstition. In 1916, the Giants had a run of 26 consecutive wins. A bag filled with 72 extra baseballs would be put on the playing field at the beginning of each game. These balls were used to replace any that were hit into the seats or any that became too dirty. The Giants, during the crazy winning streak, fell under the impression that if they were in the lead during the ninth, the last inning, carrying the ball bag off the field would ensure their win because, according to the team, they had captured the game in the bag. So that was the idea, that if this baseball team were in the lead during the ninth inning, they would take this bag full of extra balls off of the field. So it's like the win had already got into the bag, they'd captured it, and they would take it off of the field. So from that point, success was guaranteed, according to their superstition. Got it in the bag. At that point, the game is won. It's captured. So that is where we have now used that idiom to say that, well, I've got it in the bag. I've captured success. Yeah. Interesting. Again, before I prepared this podcast, I didn't know the definition of that idiom, but I don't know, it just helps us to understand them a little bit more, doesn't it? And it puts each idiom in perspective. So what I would love you to do is, please let me know in the comments of any idioms that you love to use. And then perhaps we can look up the origins, or maybe you can look up the origin and let us all know in the comments. If we were to all do that, imagine how many idioms we would have in the comments, like our own little GSL-English database of idioms in the comment section. But there you go. I hope you enjoyed that podcast today. I really enjoyed preparing it. As I say, using idioms is a great way to progress our English. So if you're at a point where you're a little bit nervous to use idioms, or perhaps you're worried about using them and perhaps getting their meaning a little bit wrong, please don't hold back, because they just add so much flavour to our use of the English language. And also, they really do help us to advance, to use the English language in a much more advanced way. So just try it out. If you get it wrong, don't worry about it. Who cares? Often mistakes help us to remember the correct meaning. So start using idioms. Perhaps even as a little challenge to you, why not try using some of the idioms that we've looked at in this podcast over the next week? And if you use them, let me know. So take it simple, try using feeling under the weather or spill the beans or something like that. But, just give it a go. Idioms add flavour to the English language. They make it more exciting. Sometimes they communicate things better than just simple words could. So yeah, give it a go. But that's the end of the episode for this week. I hope you did enjoy it, and I hope you are still enjoying the 2 podcasts every week. Of course, Sunday will always be the main podcast. It's the one that gets the most views and the most attention. But I do hope to keep up with the podcasts on Wednesdays as well. So if you can, please do show those podcasts, those episodes some love. If you can give them a like, a comment, a share, please do. It just really does help me to keep on going. But as always, thank you so much. I hope you have a great week ahead, whatever you've got planned. I hope it's not too stressful for you. I hope you achieve everything you want to. And I will see you all next week. All right. Have a good one, guys.